Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and in today's episode we're going to be reviewing and breaking down Catching Fire, Book 2 in the Hunger Games trilogy by Susan Collins. In this episode we're going to be going deep, covering specific scenes, specific character moments, and what actually makes this book hit different for readers of all ages. Um, we're going to be covering premise, who it's for, what to expect, themes, characters, standout moments, and a final verdict. Here's a quick heads up if you haven't read this book before. This book builds directly on book one, so there will be some unavoidable references back to it. This book is for readers who finish book one and want higher stakes and a more political, less game show focused plot. This means that in book one, we saw that Katniss's rebellion with the berries with Peeta really sparked a hint of rebellion in the capital itself and the districts. So this could mean a little bit of more political tension instead of the game itself, because Katniss has already participated in the games and she knows basically what it's about and a few tricks and secrets. This is also good if you're a fan of found family dynamics, as this book introduces a much bigger, more interesting ensemble cast. So it adds a little bit of higher stakes, as well as a more interesting plot. It's also good for readers who like the strategy slash alliance elements of book one and want more of that dialed up, because this Hunger Games is a quarter quell, and so it's going to be much more different. So Katniss is going to need a new strategy and more alliances if she wants to win the games, and there's also much more people, so she definitely needs alliances. It's also good for readers who want a middle book that actually escalates instead of stalling. And I like this book because it really escalates the plot like a ramp instead of just being one of those middle missions. And it really makes the book a little bit more exciting and wants you to read it. So here's what to expect. It has much slower build than book one at the start, and a lot of this book is Katniss dealing with political fallout of her actions, not just physical change, as I said before, because of what she did sparked a massive riot inside of the capital. Not the capital, in the districts. The back half of the book shifts into the second games, but with a twist that changes the entire dynamic, because this games is much more different than the other ones, which means that a lot of more characters are gonna die that Katniss really cares about, and she's gonna need a much different strategy. There's also more paranoia and psychological tension than straightforward action, as Katniss is constantly trying to read who she can trust. There's also higher emotional stakes because the cast is bigger and more people matter this time, and basically everyone has to die because it's the quarter quell and it's the Hunger Games, and there can only be one winner. The ending sets up book three hard because it's not really a self-contained story the way book one was. And now I'm going to be talking about the premise, and spoiler alert if you haven't read the book, so please cut this part of the video and read the book if you haven't, and if you don't want spoilers. This book picks up with Katniss and Peeta back home, but their berries stunt at the end of the last games has made Katniss an accidental symbol of rebellion. President Snow personally warns Katniss that her act was seen as defiance, not love, and that she needs to convince the country otherwise. So this is already a lot of pressure on Katniss, which means that she's gonna have to fight her way through President Snow's action and make sure no one from her family or people she loves or herself are punished for this. Also, the annual victory tour puts Katniss face to face with the districts, where she starts seeing real unrest for the first time. The 75th Hunger Games, also known as Special Quarter Quell, throws a twist into the reaping that changes who ends up back into the arena, which are the victors. And this adds a little bit of a more tension because some of those victors are pretty old, and Katniss has to navigate a much more complicated arena, alliances, and her own uncertainty about who's actually on her side. So there's a little bit of a trust issue here because those victors have won the Hunger Games before and they know what to do. So this could mean they're a little bit selfish, they want to win again, or it could also mean they're old people and they just want to give up. Here's what teens latch onto, or most of the age groups that read this book, because although this book is made for all age groups, and I think it's pretty interesting for no matter how old you are, it's mainly teens around middle school or high school, or maybe even like higher elementary school that read this book. So what teens really latch onto is the quarter quell twist itself, and it's the reveal of who goes back into the arena, and it's one of the biggest oh no moments in the whole series. And it completely contextualizes everything Katniss thought she understood about the games, and it's really crazy to see how powerful the capital can be, and how big of punishment they can send out to just because of a small rebellion. Or, well, it did spark a larger rebellion. And in the victory tour district visits, especially the moment in District 11 where the crowd's reaction to Katniss honoring Rue turns violent, and it's the first time readers see the capital's power actually threatened. There's also the expand cast. Finnick Oddver, a particular lens to be a fan favorite introduction, and he starts looking shallow and vain, and he's slowly revealed to be one of the most emotionally damaged and one of the most loyal characters in the entire series. There's also the who we can trust alliance building in the arena, figuring out Virus, BT, Mags, and Finnick's real intentions alongside Katniss is generally fun to puzzle through. And then there's also the clock shaped arena, and the mechanic of the arena being on a rotating timer with different deadly threats at each hour is kind of crazy, and it's one of the more clever specific set pieces in the series that gives the back half of a real ticking clock tension. Some of the things that happen are that the blood rain, fog, monkey attack sequences, and these are the moments teen readers usually cite as the most intense part of the book. There's also the star-crossed lovers performance versus Peeta's real feelings. The ambiguity from book one gets pushed further here, and the moment Peeta says he wants to keep Katniss alive, even if it means his own death, lands harder now because the readers already know him. Now, the ending twist is when Katniss wakes up on a hovercraft, realizing that the arena was broken out of on purpose, and it's also that Peeta was left behind, and it's a gut punch cliffhanger that reframes the entire book as a bigger rebellion move than Katniss for the reader, and it's realizing what happened. Now, I'm going to be talking about the theme and an analysis. The first theme is trauma and PTSD. Katniss is visibly struggling with what happened in book one, and the book doesn't rush her past it. And the next one is propaganda and symbolism. Katniss doesn't become a symbol she can't fully control, which raises concerns and questions about how movements use individuals. There's also trust under surveillance, where nearly every single communication or conversation Katniss has is potentially being watched, which shapes how character communicates. Then there's sacrifice for the collective versus survival of the individual, a recurring tension as the older victors start prioritizing Katniss's survival over their own. It's kind of emotional and also a more humane approach in this book, which we don't really see because it's about humans killing others for just food, and it's a game that the Capitol set up for a small rebellion that they had in the past. Then there's the cost of rebellion. This book makes clear that resistance isn't going to be clean or without casualties, and it's kind of setting up the tone for book three. And now here's a character breakdown. First is our main character, most loved, Katniss Everdeen. She's more reactive and overwhelmed than book one, and she spends a lot of this book realizing that she's a piece in a bigger puzzle rather than the one in a bigger game than one making the moves. Then there's Peeta Mellark. His loyalty and selflessness gets pushed to a new level, and the protect Katniss no matter what instinct becomes central to his character here. Then there's Finnick Odoer. He's introduced as a capital darling, a heartthrob stereotype, then steadily reveals depth, trauma, and genuine loyalty. It's one of the most well-received new characters in the series. Then there's Mags, Finnick's elderly mentor. She's mostly silent, but her one major action in the arena is one of the most devastating moments in the book, where she sacrifices herself for their better good. Then there's Virus and BT, the brains of the Alliance, and Virus's fragmented way of speaking becomes important rather than just quirky once you see what she's actually trying to communicate. Then there's President Snow. He's much more directly threatening here in book one, and his private conversation with Katniss adds a layer of personal dread that wasn't present before. And finally, we have Haymitch, who reveals more of how strategic manipulation he's actually doing behind the scenes, raising his stock as a character. Then comes the writing style. This book is the same direct present tense first person style as book one. The pacing is more uneven. It's deliberate slow burn political tension in the first half, then it's a sharp escalation once the quell begins. More conversations carry double meanings, and then later on in the book they start speaking a little bit more freely. Some readers find the first half a little bit more boring than the second, and this is because there's a lot more political tension, and the second half is a little bit more interesting because it's a quarter quell, and they're actually, it's like different, and they added the clock mechanism, and there's dangers in every single hour, so that's pretty interesting, and it adds a little bit more in this book. We also see that this book, Katniss and Peeta are bonding a little bit more, because in this book Peeta is being a little bit more selfless, and he wants to protect Katniss more at all costs. Here's my personal take. There's much more stronger character work than book one, especially with the older victors who really sacrifice themselves for the new victor, Katniss and Peeta. The Quarter Quell arena is more inventive setting than the first one of book one. The political build-up in the first half is necessary, but it does slow movement to book one's movement opening, which I found a little bit annoying. I wish it was a little bit faster. The ending is generally one of the biggest cliffhangers in young adult fiction or science fiction, and it completely changes the entire book on the second read. Here's some advice for the reader: pay attention to the side conversations and things characters say, as a lot of it pays off in a reread. Don't expect a repeat of book one structure. This book is doing something different on purpose. Keep track of the new victors introduced. Most of them matter a lot in book three. Book one feels slow, but that's for a book. The first half of the book feels slow, but that's for a reason, and you should understand why. You'll understand why as you go later on. So here's my verdict. In this book, there's deeper character work and a smarter, more creative arena than book one. There's a slower opening act that won't be for everyone, but it sets up real stakes for everyone. And overall, it's arguably the most rereadable book in the trilogy once you know and read all the books. So here's a quick wrap up. This book was pretty intense, a new setup for the games. There's a lot more political tension and a slower opening, and it's a little bit boring in the beginning, but that completely pays off in the second half. In the next episode, we're gonna be heading to book three, Mockingjay, to close off the actual book review series. But I'm gonna be covering the books that come after it. So that's all, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next episode.